The year was 2047, and Earth had become a shadow of its former self. Decades of pollution, overpopulation, and greed had pushed the planet to the edge of collapse. Rivers ran dry, forests turned into barren wastelands, and cities choked under layers of smog. The air smelled sour, and the skies were often gray with ash from wildfires that raged uncontrollably across continents. People lived in fear, not just of nature's wrath, but of each other. Wars over water, food, and energy resources had torn nations apart. Governments struggled to maintain order, but chaos reigned supreme. It seemed like humanity was spiraling toward extinction, unable to save itself from its own mistakes. But then something extraordinary happened, something no one could have predicted. Deep in the heart of the Sahara Desert, where sandstorms whipped endlessly and temperatures soared, during the day, a team of scientists stumbled upon something strange. At first, it looked like nothing more than a large rock sticking out of the ground. But as they dug deeper, their tools hit something solid, something metallic. When they cleared away enough sand, they realized it wasn't natural at all. It was an object, perfectly smooth and shaped like a sphere, about the size of a small car. Its surface shimmered faintly, almost like liquid metal frozen in time. No one had ever seen anything like it before. Word spread quickly among the researchers. Dr. Elias Kane, the leader of the expedition, examined the object closely. He was a tall, wiry man in his late 40s with sharp eyes and graying hair. Despite his calm demeanor, he couldn't hide his excitement. "This isn't human-made," he said to his team, his voice trembling slightly. "It's too advanced. Look at these patterns. They're not random. They're deliberate." Kane pointed to tiny grooves etched into the sphere's surface. They formed intricate designs that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles, almost like they were alive. The material itself defied explanation. It didn't rust or corrode even after being buried for who knows how long. And strangest of all, it emitted a faint hum, a sound so low it was barely audible unless you pressed your ear against it. News of the discovery reached the outside world within hours. Social media exploded with speculation. Was this some kind of ancient artifact left behind by a lost civilization? Or was it proof of alien life? Conspiracy theorists went wild, claiming everything from government cover-ups to doomsday prophecies. Meanwhile, governments around the globe scrambled to get involved. Military units descended upon the site, cordoning off the area and taking control of the operation. Reporters camped out nearby, desperate for any scrap of information. For weeks, teams worked tirelessly to study the sphere. They scanned it, prodded it, and subjected it to every test imaginable. But it resisted all attempts to crack its secrets. Then one night, something incredible happened. Dr. Kane and his assistant, a young woman named Priya Patel, were running yet another round of experiments. They had connected the sphere to a series of sensors designed to detect electromagnetic activity. For days, the readings had been erratic, spikes of energy followed by long periods of silence. But tonight something changed. The sensors lit up like fireworks and the hum grew louder. Suddenly the sphere began to glow, bathing the entire lab in soft blue light. "What's happening?" Priya whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't know," Kane replied, staring wide-eyed at the glowing orb. "But whatever it is, we need to document it." Before they could react further, the sphere let out a pulse, a wave of energy that rippled outward and knocked everyone in the room off their feet. When they recovered, they noticed something astonishing. The walls of the lab, the very air itself, seemed different. There was a strange shimmer like heat waves rising off asphalt. And then, without warning, the ceiling above them split open. No, not the ceiling. The sky. It started as a thin crack, jagged and uneven, slicing through the clouds. But it widened, rapidly revealing darkness beyond. Stars twinkled faintly in the void, but they weren't ordinary stars. These glowed brighter, larger, and closer than anything anyone had ever seen. Gasps echoed through the lab as people rushed outside to see what was happening. Across the desert, others witnessed the same phenomenon. The sky continued to split apart, forming massive fissures that stretched miles wide. From these cracks emerged shapes, enormous metallic structures that dwarfed anything humans had ever built. They floated silently, exuding an aura of power and menace. Some resembled giant ships, complete with weapons turrets and glowing engines. Others looked more organic, like living creatures made of steel. People fell to their knees in awe and terror. No one knew what these things were, or why they had appeared, but one thing was clear: they weren't from Earth. As word spread, panic gripped the planet. Cities erupted into chaos as people fled their homes, unsure whether to seek shelter or run for the hills. News anchors shouted conflicting reports trying to make sense of the unfolding catastrophe. Military forces scrambled jets and mobilized troops, though no one knew how to fight something they didn't understand. In orbit, satellites captured images of the mysterious fleet amassing near Earth. There were hundreds, maybe thousands, of ships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever constructed. Their presence loomed like a storm cloud, casting a shadow over the entire planet. Far away in deep space, alien civilizations watched with growing unease. For centuries, they had observed humanity from afar, dismissing them as primitive and chaotic. They had always assumed Earthlings would destroy themselves long before they posed any real threat. But now, seeing these colossal ships emerge from rifts in the sky, doubt crept into their minds. What if they had underestimated humanity? What if this newfound power tipped the scales in ways they couldn't predict? Back on Earth, Dr. Kane stood, frozen, gazing up at the spectacle unfolding above him. His mind raced with questions. Had his experiments triggered this event? Was the sphere responsible for opening the rifts, and most importantly, what did these beings want? He felt a pang of guilt. If this was indeed his fault, then he had unleashed something far greater than he'd ever imagined. But there was no time for regret. Whatever came next, humanity needed answers, and fast. As the first alien ship descended toward Earth, Kane knew the fate of the world rested in his hands. Whether he liked it or not, he was at the center of this cosmic storm. And the choices he made in the coming days would determine whether humanity survived or perished. The world stood still, or at least it felt that way. Across every continent, people looked up at the sky in stunned silence. The cracks that had split open earlier were now massive fissures, stretching farther than anyone could comprehend. Through these gaps, unimaginable shapes emerged, ships so large they blocked out the sun, their metallic surfaces gleaming ominously against the dark void of space. Some floated motionless as if observing. Others moved with purpose, scanning the planet below like predators sizing up their prey. Dr. Elias Kane couldn't tear his eyes away from the spectacle. He stood outside the research facility, surrounded by his team and a growing crowd of soldiers and reporters. His mind raced to make sense of what he was seeing. These ships weren't just random objects. They were organized, deliberate, and clearly advanced beyond anything humanity had ever created. But why were they here? And how had the artifact triggered this event? Before he could dwell on those questions, the ground trembled beneath his feet. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but then it grew stronger. The vibrations rattled windows and sent loose debris skittering across the desert sand. Everyone turned toward the horizon, where one of the largest ships descended slowly, its underside glowing with pulsating lights. It was unlike anything Kane had ever seen, a hybrid of machine and organism, its surface covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and writhe like living veins. "Is it landing?" someone asked, their voice trembling. Kane shook his head. "I don't think so. It's hovering." The ship stopped about 100 feet above the ground, casting a long shadow over the area. For several tense moments, nothing happened. Then, without warning, a beam of light shot downward, striking the ground near the facility. When the light faded, a group of figures stood there, tall and imposing. They were unmistakably alien. Their bodies were elongated, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with sleek armor that shimmered faintly under the sunlight. Their faces, if you could call them that, were smooth and featureless except for two glowing slits where eyes should have been. They emanated an aura of power and authority that made everyone around them take an involuntary step back. For a moment, no one spoke. The aliens didn't move either, simply standing there as if waiting for something. Then, one of them raised a hand, and images began flooding into everyone's minds. Not sounds or words, pictures. Visions of stars, planets, and ancient civilizations flashed before their eyes. It was overwhelming, disorienting, yet strangely beautiful. When the images finally stopped, the message became clear. Return the artifact. Kane's heart sank. So, they knew. Somehow these beings understood that the sphere, the artifact, was responsible for opening the rifts, and they wanted it back. Military officers stepped forward, weapons drawn but hesitant to fire. One of them, a grizzled colonel named Hayes, addressed the aliens through a megaphone. "We don't know who you are or what you want," he barked, his voice firm despite the fear in his eyes. "But we won't give up anything until you explain yourselves." The aliens didn't respond verbally. Instead, another wave of mental images assaulted the humans' minds. This time, the visions were darker. Images of destruction, warfare, and entire worlds reduced to ash. It wasn't difficult to interpret the meaning, comply or face consequences. Tension crackled in the air. Soldiers tightened their grips on their rifles, while scientists whispered urgently among themselves. Reporters captured everything on camera, broadcasting live to billions of viewers worldwide. Social media exploded with reactions, ranging from outrage to sheer panic. Governments issued conflicting statements, some urging calm and negotiation, others calling for immediate military action. Amidst the chaos, Kane realized he needed to act quickly. If humanity wanted any chance of survival, they couldn't rely solely on brute force or diplomatic posturing. They needed to understand these beings, and fast. Turning to Priya, he said, "We need to decode more of the artifact's signals. If we can establish direct communication, maybe we can avoid conflict." Priya nodded, though her face was pale. "But we don't even know if it's possible. We've barely scratched the surface." "It has to be," Kane replied grimly. "Otherwise we're dead." Meanwhile, high above Earth, the alien fleet continued to expand. Smaller scout ships detached from the motherships and began circling the planet, scanning cities, military bases, and other key locations. Their movements were methodical, calculated. Back on their command vessels, alien leaders debated their next move. Commander Vorthak, the leader of the expedition, paced the bridge of his flagship. His species, the Xyrithians, had ruled vast swaths of the galaxy for millennia, enforcing order through a combination of diplomacy and brute force. But Earth was different. Its inhabitants were unpredictable, chaotic, and, most troubling of all, capable of wielding technology far beyond their supposed level of development. They activated the Rift Core, Vorthak growled, addressing his advisors. They must have found it buried somewhere on the surface. How did such primitives manage to unlock its secrets? "Their intelligence is limited," one advisor replied, "but their adaptability is unparalleled. That is why they pose a threat." Vorthak clenched his fists. "A threat? They are children playing with tools they do not understand. Yet look at what they have done. They opened a rift that destabilized our sector of space. If left unchecked, they could unravel the fabric of reality itself." "What do you propose?" another advisor asked cautiously. "We retrieve the core," Vorthak said firmly, "and we eliminate any resistance. If they refuse to cooperate, then they leave us no choice." Back on Earth, tensions escalated rapidly. In various parts of the globe, skirmishes broke out between human forces and alien scouts. Fighter jets scrambled to intercept unidentified flying objects, only to find themselves outmatched. Alien weapons disabled planes mid-air, sending them crashing into oceans or deserts. Cities plunged into darkness as power grids failed under mysterious circumstances. Fear spread like wildfire, turning once crowded streets into ghost towns. Governments convened emergency meetings, debating how to respond. Military strategists argued for launching coordinated attacks on the alien fleet, hoping to cripple their numbers before they could retaliate. Others advocated for restraint, fearing that aggression would only provoke further hostility. Meanwhile, activists pleaded for peaceful negotiations, pointing out that war would only hasten Earth's downfall. In the midst of this turmoil, Kane worked tirelessly alongside his team. Using data collected from the artifact, they attempted to create a stable communication link. It was painstaking work, requiring precise calculations and constant adjustments. Hours turned into days, and progress remained slow. Frustration mounted as reports of casualties poured in. Finally, after nearly 3 sleepless days, they achieved a breakthrough. By synchronizing the artifact's frequencies with advanced AI algorithms, they managed to establish a rudimentary interface capable of translating alien language into human speech. The first coherent message came through garbled but intelligible. Cease hostilities. Surrender the core. Kane sighed heavily. Diplomacy might buy them time, but it wouldn't solve the root problem. Humanity needed leverage, and he knew exactly where to find it. Turning to Priya, he said, "We need to push the artifact further, find out what else it can do. If we can harness its full potential, we might stand a fighting chance." Priya hesitated. "What if we trigger something worse? What if we lose control again?" "We don't have a choice," Kane replied. "This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about proving that we deserve a place in the universe." With renewed determination, the team dove back into their work. Little did they know, their efforts would soon change the course of history, not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. The makeshift communication system blinked to life in the dimly lit lab. Dr. Elias Kane leaned over the console, his eyes fixed on the screen as lines of alien text scrolled past. The artifact hummed softly beside him, its surface pulsing faintly, with an otherworldly glow. For the first time, humanity had a way to speak directly with the beings who had descended from the skies, not through vague images or telepathic impressions, but with actual words translated into human language. It was a monumental achievement, but Kane couldn't celebrate. Outside the facility, chaos reigned. Alien scout ships continued their relentless patrols, disabling satellites, disrupting communications, and occasionally firing warning shots that vaporized military vehicles. Governments around the globe were scrambling to respond, some ordering evacuations while others mobilized troops for what many feared would be an inevitable war. Social media buzzed with conflicting reports, some claiming the aliens wanted peace, others warning of imminent invasion. Kane knew they needed answers, and fast. With Priya Patel monitoring the interface, he prepared to send Earth's first official message to the extraterrestrials. After hours of careful crafting, the transmission was ready. "We are human. We seek understanding. Why have you come?" Seconds felt like hours as they waited for a reply. Finally, the screen flickered and a response appeared. "You violated sacred law. Return the core." Kane frowned. "Core? They mean the artifact." Priya nodded. "But we can't just hand it over without knowing more. What happens if we give it back? Will they leave us alone or destroy us anyway?" Before Kane could respond, another message came through. "Resistance is futile. Surrender or face annihilation." The room fell silent. Everyone understood the gravity of those words. This wasn't diplomacy, it was an ultimatum. News of the exchange spread quickly. Military leaders convened emergency meetings debating whether to comply with the aliens' demands or fight back. Public opinion swung wildly between outrage and despair. Protesters gathered outside government buildings holding signs that read, "No surrender," and "Save humanity." Meanwhile, conspiracy theorists claimed the aliens were bluffing, arguing that their advanced technology must have weaknesses humans could exploit. Kane found himself caught in the middle of it all. Reporters camped outside the research facility demanding updates. Politicians called incessantly, pressuring him to reveal everything he'd learned about the artifact. Even within his own team, tensions ran high. Some argued for cooperation, believing resistance would only lead to disaster. Others insisted on fighting back, no matter the cost. "We need more time," Kane told Colonel Hayes during one heated discussion. "If we rush into this, we'll make mistakes. Let me keep working on the artifact. There might be something inside it we can use against them." Hayes scowled. "Time is a luxury we don't have, Doctor. Every second we waste gives them another chance to attack. If you think you can find some miracle weapon in that thing, fine. But I'm not betting the future of this planet on your experiments." Despite the pressure, Kane refused to give up. He spent every waking moment poring over data, running simulations, and testing new configurations of the artifact's interface. Slowly, patterns began to emerge. The artifact wasn't just a relic, it was a key, capable of unlocking access to vast stores of knowledge and energy. But using it required precision. One wrong move could trigger catastrophic consequences. While Kane worked, the aliens grew impatient. Their scout ships intensified their operations, targeting critical infrastructure and cutting off supply chains. In New York City, a power plant exploded after being hit by an alien beam. In Tokyo, entire neighborhoods went dark as grids failed under mysterious circumstances. Refugees fled urban centers, clogging highways and railways. Panic gripped the population, and trust in governments eroded further. Amidst the turmoil, world leaders agreed to stage a second meeting with the aliens. This time, however, they wouldn't go unarmed. Kane accompanied the delegation reluctantly, knowing full well the risks involved. The site chosen for the encounter was a remote desert plain far from civilian areas, a precautionary measure in case things turned violent. When the alien ship descended, it did so with terrifying majesty. Its massive form blotted out the sun, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. Soldiers lined the perimeter, weapons trained on the vessel as its hatch opened. Once again, the towering figures emerged, their glowing eyes scanning the assembled humans. This time, though, humanity wasn't coming empty-handed. Hidden beneath sand-covered tarps were experimental weapons designed using insights gleaned from the artifact. Energy rifles, shield generators, and EMP disruptors, all reverse-engineered from fragments of alien technology captured during earlier skirmishes, lay ready for deployment. As negotiations began, tensions simmered just below the surface. Through the communication link, Kane relayed humanity's plea for understanding. "We didn't know the artifact belonged to you," he said carefully. "We thought it was abandoned, forgotten. Please tell us why it's so important." The alien leader stepped forward, his presence commanding. His response came through the translator. "The core is ancient. It holds secrets beyond your comprehension. To possess it is to wield unimaginable power and danger. You are unworthy." Gasps rippled through the human delegation. Unworthy? The insult stung deeply, igniting anger among the soldiers present. Before anyone could react, a young diplomat made a grave mistake. Misinterpreting one of the aliens' gestures as dismissive, he shouted, "How dare you call us unworthy? We've survived wars, plagues, and disasters you couldn't imagine." The atmosphere shifted instantly. The aliens stiffened, their glowing eyes narrowing. Without warning, they raised their hands, and a pulse of energy surged outward. Soldiers collapsed, clutching their heads in agony. Equipment short-circuited, sparks flying everywhere. Chaos erupted as everyone scrambled for cover. Kane barely managed to dive behind a dune before the EMP blast hit. When he looked up, the alien ship was already ascending, disappearing into the sky. The message was clear: diplomacy had failed. The aftermath of the disastrous meeting, global morale plummeted. Casualties mounted as alien attacks intensified. Cities burned, economies crumbled, and millions became refugees overnight. Yet amidst the devastation, a spark of hope remained. Back at the lab, Kane and his team analyzed data collected during the confrontation. They discovered something crucial. The artifact contained a hidden function, a failsafe designed to disable advanced technology within a specific radius. By amplifying its range, they could potentially render the alien fleet powerless. It's risky, Priya warned. If we miscalculate, we could fry our own systems too. I know, Kane replied grimly. But it's our best shot. If we don't try, we're finished anyway. With renewed determination, they set to work. Days turned into nights as they calibrated the artifact's settings, running countless simulations to ensure accuracy. Finally, after 72 grueling hours, they were ready. All right, Kane said, addressing his exhausted team. This is it. Once we activate the pulse, there's no turning back. Are you with me? Every member nodded silently. Together, they initiated the sequence. The artifact began to hum louder, its glow intensifying until it filled the entire lab. Then, with a final adjustment, Kane pressed the activation button. A wave of energy radiated outward, invisible yet palpable. Across the globe, alien ships shuddered mid-air, their engines sputtering and dying. Weapons turrets went dark, shields flickered out, and communication arrays fell silent. Within minutes, hundreds of vessels drifted helplessly in orbit, adrift and powerless. On the ground, stunned humans watched as their enemies suddenly became vulnerable. Cheers erupted in cities and military bases alike. For the first time since the rifts had opened, humanity dared to believe they might actually win. But Kane knew better than to celebrate prematurely. Disabling the fleet was only half the battle. Now came the hard part, negotiating terms with a species that had just been humiliated. As he gazed up at the now motionless ships hanging in the sky, Kane whispered to himself, "Let's hope they're willing to talk." The pulse had worked. Across the globe, alien ships floated aimlessly in the sky, their once imposing presence now reduced to lifeless hulks. For the first time since the rifts opened, humanity dared to breathe a sigh of relief. The artifact's hidden failsafe had done exactly what Dr. Elias Kane had hoped. It disabled the extraterrestrials' advanced technology, leaving them stranded and vulnerable. But as the initial wave of triumph washed over Earth, Kane couldn't shake the feeling that this victory was only temporary. The aliens hadn't been defeated, they'd merely been neutralized. And if there was one thing Kane had learned about these beings, it was that they were resourceful and proud. Humiliating them like this would not go unanswered. In orbit, aboard their flagship, Commander Vorthak seethed with rage. His sleek armor glowed faintly as he paced the bridge, his glowing eyes narrowed into slits. Around him, his crew scrambled to assess the damage. Reports poured in from every corner of the fleet. Engines dead, weapons offline, shields non-functional. Whatever force had struck them was unlike anything they'd encountered before. How could this happen? Vorthak demanded, his voice low but laced with fury. Our systems are impervious to interference. One of his advisors hesitated before responding. It appears the humans used the core against us. They've somehow unlocked its defensive mechanisms. Vorthak froze. Impossible, he growled. The core is ancient. Its secrets should be beyond their comprehension. Yet here we are. Another advisor chimed in cautiously. Their adaptability is unmatched. Perhaps we underestimated them. The room fell silent. Underestimate. That single word ignited a firestorm of frustration within Vorthak. He had spent centuries enforcing order across galaxies, crushing rebellions, and subjugating civilizations deemed unworthy of survival. Humans were supposed to be primitive, chaotic, easy to control. But instead they had turned the tables, using stolen knowledge to strike back at their oppressors. Enough, Vorthak snapped, slamming his fist onto the console. We will regroup. Once our systems reboot, we will retaliate, with overwhelming force. Back on Earth, celebrations erupted in cities around the world. People poured into streets cheering and chanting slogans like, "Earth prevails," and "Humanity wins." Military bases buzzed with activity as commanders prepared for the next phase of operations. Scientists worked tirelessly to analyze data collected during the pulse, hoping to refine their newfound advantage. Dr. Kane, however, remained uneasy. Sitting alone in the lab, he stared at the artifact. Its glow dimmer now after expending so much energy. While everyone else celebrated, he couldn't ignore the nagging thought that disabling the alien fleet wasn't enough. It bought time, yes, but it didn't solve the root problem. Sooner or later, the Zerithians would recover, and when they did, they wouldn't hesitate to unleash their full might. "What do you think?" Priya asked, entering the room quietly. She held 2 cups of coffee, offering one to Kane. "I think we're playing with fire," Kane replied, taking the cup, but barely touching it. "We've humiliated them. Do you really believe they'll just walk away?" Priya sighed, sitting down beside him. "No, but maybe this gives us leverage. If we can negotiate while they're still weak." "And say what?" "Sorry for crippling. Your fleet, now let's be friends?" Kane shook his head. "They don't see us as equals, Priya. To them, we're pests who got lucky." "Then what do we do?" she pressed. "Keep fighting until one side wipes out the other?" Kane leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "I don't know, but I do know this. We need more than just brute force. We need understanding. Maybe, if we can prove we're capable of handling the core responsibly, they'll respect us." Before they could discuss further, an urgent message came through. Colonel Hayes appeared on the monitor, his face grim. "Dr. Kane, we've intercepted signals from the alien fleet. They're attempting to restore power to their ships. At this rate, they'll be operational again within 24 hours. Kane's heart sank. 24 hours wasn't nearly enough time to prepare for another confrontation, not without risking everything. Still, they had no choice but to act quickly. "Colonel," Kane said firmly, "we need to establish direct communication again. Now that we've shown we can fight back, maybe they'll listen." Hayes frowned. "You really think they'll negotiate after what we just did?" "It's worth a shot," Kane replied. "If nothing else, it buys us more time." With renewed urgency, Kane and his team worked to re-establish contact. Using the artifact's interface, they sent out a series of messages, each carefully crafted to convey both strength and willingness to cooperate. "We seek peace, not conflict. Let us talk before further bloodshed occurs." For hours there was no response. The silence weighed heavily on everyone involved. Just as hope began to fade, the screen flickered to life. Alien text scrolled across the display. "Explain yourselves." Kane exhaled sharply. This was it, the moment everything hinged on. With Priya monitoring the system, he began typing a reply. "We acted in self-defense. Your actions threatened our survival. But we recognize your claim to the core. Tell us what you want and we will find a solution together." Again, the wait felt eternal. Finally, a new message appeared. "You dare demand terms after attacking us?" Kane hesitated, then typed, "We do not demand, we propose. War benefits neither side. Work with us and we may achieve mutual understanding." Another long pause followed. Then, unexpectedly, the aliens responded. "Agreed. Meet us at coordinates provided." The designated meeting point was a remote island in the Pacific Ocean, chosen for its isolation and neutrality. Both sides arrived cautiously, their distrust palpable. The alien delegation landed in a massive ship that hovered above the water, while human representatives gathered on a nearby beach, protected by armed guards and experimental weapons powered by insights from the artifact. This time, negotiations proceeded differently. Gone were the hostile gestures and misinterpretations that had marred previous attempts. Instead, both parties communicated directly through the artifact's interface. Ensuring clarity, each side laid out their demands and concerns, seeking common ground. For the Zerithians, the core represented sacred technology tied to their history and identity. Returning it meant restoring balance to their fractured sector of space. For humanity, relinquishing the core meant surrendering a tool that could potentially save their dying planet. Yet, as discussions continued, compromises emerged. "We propose joint custody of the core," Kane suggested. "Establish a research facility where both our species can study it under agreed-upon conditions." Commander Vorthak considered the offer, exchanging glances with his advisors. Finally, he nodded. Acceptable, provided safeguards are implemented to prevent misuse. As the agreement took shape, a fragile truce formed. Weapons were lowered, and tentative plans were made. To collaborate, while skepticism lingered on both sides, the shared goal of preserving the core offered a foundation for cooperation. By the end of the day, humanity had achieved something remarkable. Not just survival, but respect. The Xyrithians, though, reluctant, acknowledged Earth's ingenuity and determination. For the first time, humans weren't seen as mere primitives. They were recognized as equals in the vast expanse of the cosmos. As Kane watched the alien ship ascend into the sky, he allowed himself a small smile. The road ahead would be difficult, fraught with challenges and uncertainties. But for now, humanity had proven it belonged among the stars. And somewhere deep in space, other civilizations took notice. Perhaps Earth wasn't so insignificant after all. The fragile truce between humanity and the Xyrithians marked a turning point, not just for Earth but for the entire galaxy. For the first time in recorded history, two vastly different civilizations had found a way to coexist, even if only tentatively. The agreement to share custody of the artifact, now referred to as the core, was more than just a diplomatic milestone. It symbolized hope. Hope that war didn't have to be inevitable. Hope that understanding could bridge even the widest divides. Dr. Elias Kane stood on the beach where negotiations had taken place, watching as the alien ship disappeared into the horizon. His clothes were damp from the salty breeze and exhaustion weighed heavily on his shoulders. Yet he felt a strange sense of calm, a quiet satisfaction that came from knowing he'd played a role in averting catastrophe. Beside him, Priya Patel wrapped her jacket tighter around herself, her eyes fixed on the spot where the ship had vanished. "They're really going to work with us," she said softly, almost as if testing the words aloud. Kane nodded. "For now, yes. But this is just the beginning. Trust takes time to build, and time was something they would need plenty of." The joint research facility proposed during negotiations was still months away from completion. In the meantime, both sides agreed to exchange knowledge cautiously, sharing only what was necessary to maintain stability. Alien engineers began assisting humans in repairing damaged infrastructure, while human scientists worked alongside Xyrithian experts to better understand the core's capabilities. It was an uneasy partnership, fraught with tension and mutual suspicion, but it worked. Back on Earth, life slowly began to return to normal, or at least, as close to normal as possible under the circumstances. Refugees who had fled cities during the initial invasion started returning home, though scars remained. Buildings bore the marks of alien weaponry, and skies were often dotted with scout ships patrolling overhead. Governments struggled to rebuild economies shattered by weeks of chaos, but aid arrived unexpectedly from their new allies. Advanced Xyrithian technology, once feared as a weapon of destruction, became a tool for healing. Purification systems capable of cleaning polluted rivers were deployed worldwide. Energy grids powered by sustainable fusion reactors replaced outdated fossil fuel plants. Medical advancements cured diseases previously thought incurable. These changes weren't immediate, but they offered glimpses of a brighter future. Public opinion toward the aliens shifted dramatically. At first, fear and resentment lingered among many communities. People remembered the destruction wrought by the Xyrithian fleet all too vividly. But as tangible benefits emerged, attitudes softened. Social media buzzed with videos of children marveling at alien machinery, or farmers thanking extraterrestrial engineers for restoring irrigation systems. Even skeptics couldn't deny the progress being made. Still, not everyone welcomed the newfound alliance. Conspiracy theories persisted, claiming the Xyrithians had ulterior motives. Some fringe groups accused governments of selling out humanity's sovereignty, while others warned that reliance on alien tech would leave Earth vulnerable to future manipulation. Protests erupted sporadically, though they were largely peaceful compared to the violence that had defined earlier days. Amidst this complex landscape, Kane found himself thrust into the spotlight. Once a relatively unknown scientist working in obscurity, he had become a global figure overnight. Media outlets clamored for interviews, activists sought his endorsement, and politicians invited him to high-level summits. He handled the attention with characteristic humility, deflecting praise and emphasizing teamwork. "The real heroes are the people who refuse to give up," he told reporters during one press conference. "This isn't about me. It's about what we can achieve when we come together." Yet privately, Kane wrestled with doubts. The core remained a mystery, its full potential still untapped. Every discovery brought new questions, and every breakthrough hinted at deeper layers of complexity. What if they unlocked something dangerous? What if the Xaerithians decided humanity wasn't ready after all? These thoughts haunted him late at night, when the lab was quiet and the hum of the core filled the air like a heartbeat. On such nights, he often found himself staring at the artifact, wondering whether they had truly turned the tables or simply delayed the inevitable. Meanwhile, far beyond Earth's atmosphere, Commander Vorthak faced challenges of his own. Back aboard his flagship, he convened a council of Xaerithian leaders to discuss the ongoing situation. While some praised his decision to negotiate with humanity, others criticized it as weakness. "You allowed primitives to dictate terms," one elder growled, his voice dripping with disdain. "What precedent does this set? Will you bow to every lesser species that dares defy us?" Vorthak clenched his fists, but kept his composure. "I acted in the best interest of our people. The core is sacred. It cannot fall into unworthy hands. By forming an alliance, we ensure its protection while maintaining control." "But at what cost?" another leader interjected. "They've seen our vulnerabilities. If they betray us—" "They won't," Vorthak interrupted firmly. "Not if we play our cards right. Humanity is unpredictable, yes, but also resourceful. Together, we may uncover secrets within the core that neither side could unlock alone." The council murmured in reluctant agreement. For all their pride, the Xaerithians recognized the value of collaboration. Still, unease lingered. Many wondered whether trusting humans was a gamble worth taking. Months passed and the Joint Research Facility finally opened its doors. Located in a remote region of Antarctica, the facility served as neutral ground, designed to accommodate both human and Xaerithian needs. Scientists from both species worked side by side, exchanging ideas and insights. Progress was slow but steady, with each breakthrough building trust incrementally. One day, Kane and Priya stood before a massive, holographic display showing a detailed map of the galaxy. Lines connected stars, planets, and anomalies representing data extracted from the core. For the first time, humanity glimpsed the vastness of the universe and its place within it. "Do you think we'll ever explore those places?" Priya asked, pointing to a distant cluster of stars. Kane smiled faintly. "Maybe. One day. But for now, let's focus on surviving here." As they continued studying the map, something caught Kane's eye, a faint pulse emanating from deep space. It matched the frequency of the core's energy signature. Could there be others like it? And if so, what did that mean for the future? Before he could investigate further, alarms blared throughout the facility. A message flashed on the screen. "Incoming transmission detected." Kane exchanged a glance with Priya. Whatever was coming next, it promised to change everything yet again. In the end, humanity's journey wasn't about conquest or dominance, it was about resilience. The rifts in the sky had forced them to confront their fears, question their assumptions, and rise above their limitations. They hadn't defeated the Xaerithians. They had earned their respect. And perhaps that was the greatest victory of all. Kane returned to work. He reminded himself of something simple but profound. No matter how daunting the challenges ahead, humanity had proven it could adapt, innovate, and endure. Together they had turned the tables, not just on their enemies but on themselves. And somewhere out there, among the stars, other civilizations watched and waited, curious to see what Earth would do next.